Every third adult in the world experiences sleep problems from time to time, and every seventh adult suffers from chronic insomnia. And sleep, in the words of the English playwright Thomas Dekker, is the golden chain that ties health and our bodies together. Insufficient sleep has been linked to neurosis, weight gain, and cardiovascular disease. People who suffer from these conditions are usually prescribed various medications. Russian scientists have created the world's first ever sleep-enhancing device, which can help you fall asleep faster and sleep better without any pills.
Quality sleep is vital for our well-being. I can't emphasize it enough. We need at least 7 hours of sleep to function properly. Sleep is extremely important for body and mind. In living beings, circadian rhythms are regulated by the amount of light exposure. Bright light triggers the release of wakefulness hormones, and when the light is dim, sleep hormones begin to be produced. But the interesting thing is, it wasn't always this way. The very first single-celled organisms already had the circadian clock, a 24-hour timekeeping system. But those single-celled organisms didn't live on land. They lived deep in the ocean, so they couldn't be exposed to daylight. Back in 2015, we conducted a study using a group of volunteers, and the study provided fascinating findings. The participants reported daily on how they had slept the night before. We were looking for a common factor that would simultaneously affect the quality of sleep for all participants in the whole group. The focus group included people from different countries around the globe. They all displayed surprisingly similar sleep patterns. For instance, one day, they reported that they slept badly and had nightmares, and the next day, everyone reported sleeping well and experienced having nice dreams and even lucid dreams. There was only one external parameter to correlate with the results, and that parameter was the subtle changes in Earth's magnetic field during the 24-hour period. Inside us, inside each of our cells, there's still this ancient, almost vestigial mechanism which responds to the geomagnetic shifts. As the Earth rotates on its axis and orbits around the Sun at the same time, the geomagnetic field changes depending on which side of our planet is now facing the Sun. And this difference between the day and the night sides through the 24-hour period affects how we feel during the day and our state at night.
Scientists have found what geomagnetic field values are for sleep and simulated these conditions in a lab environment.
We know that each cell in our body responds to the geomagnetic field. And we know that it takes a certain rhythm to fall asleep. When you rock a baby to sleep, it stimulates the baby's vestibular and parasympathetic nervous systems. The rocking frequency is the same as the heartbeat frequency, which is about 1 Hz. Even by tapping our thumb and index finger together, like this, at heartbeat frequency, we can help our bodies to fall asleep, and we'll fall asleep faster. So what we did, we simply put 2 and 2 together and developed a great device which makes no noise whatsoever and doesn't require any physical contact and still helps people fall asleep. Basically, it generates a magnetic field and turns it on and off at the frequency of 1 Hz.
Luba, how do you evaluate the efficiency of a device that generates electromagnetic impulses if the device is working while the person is asleep?
You need electroencephalography. It's a technique used to record the brain's electrical activity by placing electrodes along the scalp. Thus, a researcher can see when you are in deep sleep, when you dream, and at what time you start to wake up. The Cube's developers used this method to test their device.
We began with mice, which are typically used for lab tests. To demonstrate that there's indeed some effect, we recorded each mouse's electrogram to see when it was asleep or awake, and what exactly happened during those times. We placed their boxes at equal distances from the source of the magnetic field. This was how we determined the basic work modes in terms of frequency and intensity, and saw what had a beneficial effect on the mice and what could cause sleep deprivation. We used the data as a basis as we moved on to human test subjects. Since we were dealing with extremely weak magnetic fields, there was nothing unethical or harmful. Earth's magnetic field at its surface is about 50 microtesla, and our cube generates 40 microtesla at its surface, and the field drops off 1,000 times over distance. So the impact is very, very subtle. We began human studies with subjective testing. This is when you give a person a device to use, and they fill out an assessment form about the quality of their sleep. We also observed our participants to see which work modes led to improved sleep or, vice versa, bad dreams. Then we moved on to a series of objective tests. Those were conducted in the Institute of Higher Nervous Activity of the RAS in the Research Laboratory for Neurobiology of Sleep and Wakefulness and led by Vladimir Borisovich Dorokhov. Our volunteers were students. They slept during the day in 3 stages, and during each stage, they were exposed to a different magnetic field frequency, and a control group received a placebo. We told them to go to bed and try to fall asleep. And we put the cube on the bed head so that they couldn't see the indicator, whether it was on or off. It was necessary in order to ensure the objectivity of the test. For the first 30 minutes, the device was off, and then we turned it on for another 30 minutes. The participants didn't know when the cube was on or off. After that, we compared the data from the control group with those of the subject group, and that was it.
The researchers have found that magnetic impulses ranging from 1 to 8 Hz stimulate deep sleep, while impulses of 20 to 40 Hz make sleep lighter, which helps us to wake up more easily.
We can vary the impulse frequencies throughout the night depending on the desired outcomes. If we, for example, wanted deep sleep, we can set the frequency to 1 Hz, 2 Hz maximum. This will make sleep long, uninterrupted, and high quality so that it could be as restorative as possible, and we will wake up fully refreshed. And by the morning time, we can increase the frequency. We can kind of impose the wakefulness rhythm on our brains and turning on the areas that are usually active when we're awake. We call this assistance in waking up. It's like you're sleeping in a dark room with tight curtains, and at a point, when you need to wake up, there's no alarm signal. It's like someone opens the curtains, and you gently transition into a light sleep stage. We're working in close contact with sleep specialists and neurologists, and what we've discovered is that when a patient struggles with some form of sleeping problems or sleep disorder, 90% of the time it's psychosomatic. It's about all sorts of negative reinforcements. A person may have experienced acute insomnia, which lasted for 2 or 3 weeks, and the person develops a fear of being unable to fall asleep. And even though the actual cause of insomnia may be gone, the fear remains. And that fear is what causes chronic insomnia. This is why it's psychosomatic. The cause is now here. The biggest challenge facing fundamental science in the 21st century is to find out how the brain works. What is consciousness? That's the area of our research. The brain, as it turns out, is one of the most complex organs in all animals. There's still a lot we don't know, and it's very hard to discover as we practically work in the dark. Because any intervention may ruin this extremely complex mechanism. Before us, nobody had actually studied how those weak, low electromagnetic frequencies affect the quality of sleep. That was because those types of studies are very difficult, and the equipment to detect and record and compare the necessary data was invented relatively recently. So it took a combination of the right technology, the right circumstances, and the right ideas in the same geographical area. In some ways, yes, we've been lucky. But we saw the opportunity coming and took it quickly. We've patented our technology. And, as we found during our patent research, nobody else had used magnetic fields in the way that we did. We've sent our patent applications to India and China, and this year, we're planning to apply for patents in Brazil and Australia. As we developed the device, team members also had sleeping problems sometimes, and without the cube, it would have been much harder to finish the project.
Luba, show us someone who's had a good night's sleep.